Good evening and welcome, everyone. My name is Jake Galloway, and I am Director of Membership at Middle-States Association. School leaders around the world are encountering once-in-a-lifetime opportunities brought about by the rise of AI. And Egypt is no exception. Under Minister of Education Mohammed Abdullatif's leadership, Egypt has made AI adoption a national priority, inspiring schools nationwide to pioneer new approaches to powerful learning. Middle-States President and CEO Christian Talbot has continually articulated our organization's stance, one we've held firmly over the past 2 years. We envision an educational landscape that is human-led and AI-informed, precisely in that order. Today, MSA is delighted to host a distinguished panel of experts representing diverse perspectives on the role of AI in the Egyptian educational context. Our panelists will clarify the opportunities and challenges Egyptian school leaders face, offering practical strategies for leveraging AI to unlock transformative learning experiences. So as I introduce our powerhouse panelists, I would love to know who is here with us on the call. So if you wouldn't mind dropping your name, your institution, your location into the chat, that'll help us understand who is joining us in our conversation today. So I would first like to introduce Dr. Maha Bailey. Dr. Bailey is a professor of practice at the Center for Learning and Teaching at the American University in Cairo. She holds a PhD in education from the University of Sheffield in the United Kingdom, and she is the co-founder of Virtually Connecting, a grassroots movement that challenges academic gatekeeping at conferences. Middle-States is also proud to include Dr. Bailey as a member of our AI advisory team. So welcome to you, Dr. Bailey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Our next panelist is Dr. Kapono Siati. Dr. Siati has led schools in the United States and Egypt and shepherded the American International School of Egypt through the early days of publicly available generative AI. Today, he serves as the president of the Pacific American Foundation and as a board member for ESOL Education. Dr. Siati holds a PhD in International Education Leadership from North Central University. And Middle-States is proud to say that Dr. Siati is a past member of our International Schools Advisory Committee. So welcome to you, Dr. Siati.
It's a privilege to be here. Nice to see you.
Wonderful. It's great to have you. Okay. Our next panelist is Dr. Lena Lewis. Dr. Lewis is a seasoned educational leader with over 25 years of experience in international school leadership, accreditation, and strategic reform. She has served as Chief Academic Officer at the Riyadh Schools Platform MISC Foundation and has held senior roles with Ta'alim, UAE, and leading accrediting bodies, including MSA-CESS and the IB. She currently serves as MSA's Associate Vice President for International Accreditation. So Dr. Lewis, welcome to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jake. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce Amber Berry. Amber is the inaugural Vice President of AI and Strategy for Middle-States Association. She's the co-founder of RAIL, Responsible AI and Learning, which is a series of endorsements for K-12 schools to have access to an implementation framework for AI. The MSA AI team is working with 75 different schools in 29 different countries, impacting over 75,000 students since its launch in March of 2024. Endorsement 1 is in AI literacy, safety, and ethics, and endorsement 2 is an essential learning experience with AI. So welcome to you, Amber. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the warm welcome.
Wonderful. And I see that folks are sharing a few things in the chat. Wonderful to see everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. So I would love to begin with an exploration of the intersection between AI and powerful learning experiences in Egyptian schools. So my first question is for for you, Dr. Bailey. So, Dr. Bailey, your research interests are wide and diverse. They include things like faculty development, critical thinking, intercultural learning, and educational technology. What has your research helped you understand about the unique opportunities Egyptian educators have when considering how to use AI in the classroom?
I love this question, and I want to invite people in the chat to tell me how they feel about AI these days. So when ChatGPT first came out, I think one of the first things I always ask people is how they're feeling about AI these days, and I've been asking this for the past 2 years, and that has changed over time. I think there are a lot of unique opportunities with AI, especially related to figuring out as educators what is really essential learning, what is essential about the learning experience we have in schools that AI cannot do, so that we can focus on that and then let the AI do the stuff that it can do, because students have access to AI. That's not going to go away. In the same way they've had access to social media and internet, and we couldn't stop them from that. So we just need to recognize they have it. And then we need to sort of dig deep and understand what our teaching philosophies are, what we really have to offer them that AI can't, and change the way we do our teaching and our assessment. Figure out where AI can help and figure out where AI can't help. I think the issue that is happening with young people these days is they don't have that critical AI literacy, and we're still all developing this. It's all new and uncertain. And so they're using it for everything. And what we need to do is we need to help them develop that wisdom of, oh, AI is appropriate to use for this, but in this other space, AI makes things up and it's hallucinating, so maybe that's not a good idea. We need to help students recognize biases in AI. If they're not even aware of the concept of implicit bias at a very young age, which it's hard to know that at a young age, they won't realize that AI is doing that. And especially coming from a place like Egypt, AI tools tends to make up things about my part of the world, or to stereotype my religion and my history. If it's not ancient Egyptian history, if it's more recent, it makes things up that aren't true. And so students need to realize that their identity isn't well represented here, but that they could use AI for other things. And we need to give them opportunities to practice using AI with our help, so that they get our wisdom and develop the critical thinking of figuring out, okay, this is where AI is going to help me, and this is how I can verify and assess whether this is something I can take or not. The research I have done with educators is that a lot of people are struggling with how to do this equitably, because some students will have access to paid AI tools and some will not. Educators, also, there's a lot of inequity among educators, like how digitally savvy are you? How much time do you have to dedicate to something like this? Is your discipline one of the disciplines where there's a lot of people experimenting with AI and you have a community around you to help you experiment and find out what's working for other people? Or are you in a space where most people are resisting it? And sometimes it's a legitimate resistance. It's just that we all need to get an opportunity to experiment and decide for ourselves whether this is something we can integrate into our courses or not. I also have found a lot of opportunities for educators to use AI for things like helping them create multiple choice quizzes and like have a big test bank, for example, and you just revise that, help you develop your lesson plan. And the newer AIs that are better at taking documents from you so that they create that kind of thing with your information are less likely to go off on a tangent, and therefore more likely to give you what you wanted, and they'll save you time, and then you can spend more time doing the other things that matter to you the most. And I found educators find this really helpful. But the tools change all the time. So whatever we say today will be different tomorrow. And everybody needs someone in their community to help them stay on track with what's going on, or at least know what needs to be explored.
Wonderful. Dr. Bailey, I think what I love about your response is that it started with an invitation into the educator's educational philosophy. What does it mean to be an exceptional educator, and what are things that I can provide that an AI tool cannot, right? And then to think about, okay, when we get more tactically, when we get more kind of hands-on, what does that look like in the classroom? What does that look like as I'm thinking about assessment? So it sounds like there's a lot of fantastic opportunities there. Thank you so much for sharing. I would love to turn to you, Dr. Lewis. So as MSA's Associate Vice President for International Accreditation, you're working with dozens of schools across Egypt as they engage in MSA's accreditation process. And I'm curious, what are some novel ways that you've seen Egyptian school leaders leverage AI to foster powerful learning experiences in their schools?
Thank you, Jake. It's a very good question. I've seen schools in Egypt at different phases of adoption, to be honest. I've seen some Egyptian schools rejecting it and some teachers rejecting it, banning it from schools. But I've also seen school leaders and staff who are using AI in very thoughtful ways. What I find most exciting is when students are really encouraged to use AI for exploration. And I've seen one English teacher assign an essay for her students and asking them to use AI to generate an essay topic, and then providing them with rubrics to reflect on what the AI has generated so that they're marking the AI generated essay. And that is really good because they're treating it as a thinking partner. And I've seen some teachers are using it to personalize learning, so that they can differentiate their instructions and to give students tools for research and idea generation. And it's really good. I mean, I'm reading now a book on action research, and it's all about trying things out, reflecting, and improving. I see schools now in Egypt with the same, doing the same with AI. They're testing small changes, they're learning together and moving forward with purpose.
Wonderful. So this idea that AI can be used as a tool for exploration, for testing, for experimentation, and there's really a lot of possibilities depending on the discipline, depending on the context, that this can be used to create really transformative learning experiences for young people. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. I would actually love to kind of shift our attention from the teaching and learning side of things into the question of ethics, which is often so prominent in this conversation around AI. So, Amber, I am curious about your perspective on this question. So, as the co-founder of MSA's Rail endorsement, you've helped over 75 schools across the world safely and creatively and effectively adopt AI. And I'm wondering, like, one of the AI-related challenges that is most prominent is the question of academic integrity. Students using ChatGPT to write their essays, students using ChatGPT to cheat on their assignments. I'm wondering, how have you helped schools navigate this?
When we launched Rail, we already knew from school leaders and teachers that one of their leading fears about generative AI in education is cheating. And this remains today. So while some schools have attempted to really police generative AI, like by banning it, using AI detectors, even though AI detectors have been proven to make biased decisions that incorrectly accuse students of cheating, and usually along two axes here. One, tracking to students whose first language is not English. The detectors will incorrectly say they're cheating, and then also for students who are neurodivergent. And so we do discourage those tactics of avoiding and banning and trying to catch. And so really what Rail schools do is they start the process by re-anchoring in why students learn and how we define powerful learning. It's exactly what Maha was just saying earlier. And we do this by turning schools right back to their missions. And so, the whole world is encountering generative AI at some level right now and trying to reconcile. And I think schools are at an advantage because we're mission-aligned institutions. So we have ethics embedded in the graduates that we want to cultivate in our care. And so integrity, it's not just about catching misuse. It's about cultivating trust. It's about being very clear and challenging students appropriately in the learning experience. So what we've noticed is successful schools are engaging in transparency. Teachers are talking about how and when they are using generative AI, and they are inviting students to use generative AI in explicit ways. This looks like some schools use almost like a traffic light model. So there's red and amber or yellow and green. Green means, sure, you can use generative AI for this assignment. That's fine. Partner with it, collaborate with it the way you will. Maybe the yellow traffic light means you need to ask permission, you need to disclose, you need to cite, or here are the specific ways that you could use generative AI in this assignment, perhaps for the outline, but not for writing the content and the rest of your essay. And another really practical way this shows up, I love Leon Fers's AI assessment scale. And this is a way that it gives all these different uses for generative AI. I mean, generative AI can be a tutor, it can be a collaborator, a thought partner. It's not just generating an essay, as many educators and folks who aren't experienced jump to the conclusion that it just cheats for you. It just does what does all the work for you. And so when folks use these tools, when educators post in the assignments, this is this is a green light assignment, or this is an assignment where you can use it as a collaborator in these opening steps. When you're really explicit and inviting students in to experience it in that way, the outcomes are so much more positive. And now students are sharing back and making requests and getting creative and sharing their outputs in ways that are helping educators partner. So it does feel like you need to have guidelines and policies, but you can't do this unless the team is AI literate. That's part of the Rail experience. If you don't know much about generative AI, you're welcome to have an opinion, but our request is that you have some AI literacy and some experience so you can be critical and you can understand it. Again, Maha used these words before. It's really important to check your work, to really think critically about what's coming, and to teach students how to do that very same thing. And that only comes by actually using it ourselves.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think I'm intrigued by this shift that I'm hearing you're inviting us to make from being reactive, waiting for something negative to happen, to really being proactive and thinking, well, how can we leverage increased transparency to think about how we can invite AI into spaces deliberately and offer guidance and support for students to use it in ways that align with the broader ethical sense that we are trying to develop and cultivate within them. So that sounds fantastic. Dr. Siati, I would love to turn to you now as an experienced educator, as someone who takes the ethics of young people seriously. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on a few ideas. So as the head of the American International School in Egypt, you cultivated a community that was dedicated to making the world a better place, one that I imagine was characterized by increased integrity. And I'm wondering, how did you guide AIS Egypt's response to AI in ways that reflected these ethical aspirations?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a privilege to be here with all these guests and hearing this. I'm learning stuff just the first few minutes of being a panelist here myself. I like you said in my introduction, I was on the campus as a director in the very beginning stages of this. But in my current role as education officer and board member at ESOL, I get to kind of follow what our schools, AIS main campus and West Campus in Egypt are doing, but also more broadly across the ESOL network. Maybe if I had permission, I would start with one step up, and then I'll try to get to some actual teacher classroom examples, because I'm imagining people listening would appreciate the classroom examples as well. But that one stage up, when I'm thinking about ethical use, integrity, I'm thinking about a couple of things. I actually think, as organizations, as adults, as educators, as Dr. Barry was saying, mission-driven organizations, one of the things we really need to keep our eyes on is not necessarily just that kind of cheating role. I think Dr. Barry put a good frame on that, and I would definitely agree with what she said. I think there's something that we do need to keep our eyes on, and it's the broader use of technology, specifically the accelerant that is AI in attention, focus, and human to human interaction. Right? I see lots of things happening in the education space, driven by educational publishers, driven by software companies, driven sometimes even by hardware companies, that push into our decision making as ethical educators. And I feel like we're being marketed, not feel like, I know we're being marketed products and services that we can tell as responsible educators are not good for our kids. Specifically, I can give you lots of examples for young kids, but even older kids, I see a degradation of student attention. of our ability to help students hold their attention. And I'm more worried about that broader conversation because, like all the rest of the panelists said, like AI is here. We have to welcome it as a member of our team. If we don't, the other ethical dilemma is that we're hampering our students, right? They will emerge into a world where AI is real. And like I've heard many times from people I respect, if AI is not a part of your team is disadvantaged. I hope AI is not your only team, your whole team. I hope AI is not replacing the amazing human creativity and thoughtfulness and sometimes slowness, which is also good on teams. But a team without AI is not a fully functional team. Okay, so I'll try to be really brief and get an actual example. So I get to see what's happening at all 10 of our schools across the world, from Cyprus all the way to Hong Kong, and I'll give you one example. I just recently was able to observe a teacher who that was working on a poetry project. Again, he'd formed teams of students, and the students were collaborating on a single poem. And he had a giant piece of chart paper out with giant Mr. Sketch markers. These were upper middle school students, I think 8th grade or something like that. And they had AI as a partner. The group of 3 students had a computer open, one computer, and they had I forget which chosen AI site open. And he asked them to go back and forth. He asked them to have AI generate some ideas. Now, you as a team, think about those ideas, choose one, debate it, which is a good theme for your poem, and write it on the big chart paper. And then he had AI edit. So he said, no, take this idea and you guys write a good first opening line, and then put that line into AI and see what AI tells you about it. He really set them up by facilitating the process of AI becoming a partner. He had them experiment with AI being the thought generator. He also had them experiment with them being the thought generator and AI being the editing partner. He gave them both experiences and let them reflect on it and saw the pros and the cons of both. So it was such a simple example that I think when I've shared it with other educators, they're like, oh yeah, I can do that. That's really helpful.
Amazing. So this idea that AI should be on your team, right? That it shouldn't be your whole team, but it should be an important member, an important part of that team, and finding ethical and creative ways to invite AI into your team is going to be essential to prepare our students for an AI powered world. I think my next question goes to either or both Dr. Bailey or Dr. Lewis. I think earlier in the conversation, one of us referenced this idea of fear, that fear may be a part of what is I think preventing educators or school leaders from inviting AI to be a part of our team. And so to you, Dr. Bailey and or Dr. Lewis, I'm curious, how have you seen this fear show up in the Egyptian context specifically? And what are things that folks are doing to move past this fear in ways that are good for them, but more importantly, good for students?
I think related to what Amber was saying earlier, I think there are 2 levels of fear. The one where the educator is afraid of using the tool itself and just trying to avoid, like, pretend it doesn't exist, like, head in the sand type of thing. I remember faculty saying, well, I'm not going to talk to my students about whether they're allowed to use it or not because I don't want to give them ideas. I'm like, they already have ideas. They want to know what your idea is. But I think nobody is thinking that way anymore. The other one is the whole AI detector, how do I catch them kind of thing. And it's keeping telling them that you can't catch them. That's not the point. That's not what you need to do. If they are able to do your assignment well with AI without any effort, then there's something wrong with your assignment. Change it. And so the thing about overcoming the fear is, to me, my experience as an educational developer, I support all the educators at AUC and also around the world, actually. And I just say, come to me, show me your assignment. Let's put your assignment through AI. Let's pretend we're a smart student, not a stupid student. So you'll change a little bit of the assignment prompt to get it better. Look at what AI can do. Now that can't be your assignment. Now what can you do beyond that? And let the students do what they can do with AI. And people realize it can take half an hour to learn 2 or 3 AI tools. I don't even just teach them ChatGPT. I throw them Gemini, and depending on what they teach, I'll choose another tool, like an image generation one or another one. and I'll say, these are all the ones your students have access to that are free. Now try them yourself. You have to put everything through it to find out what it can do for you. And then they're not afraid of it once they try it, is what I usually find out. And the other thing is they realize that once they start talking to their students about it, they learn from their students about how the students use it, and their own AI literacy improves with the students. Because by now at AUC, by this time, students have had it for a couple of years. And so they learn from their students. And, when you ask your students to be transparent with you rather than to prevent them from doing the thing, this transparency gives the students permission to use AI, and then we learn from how they're using it. And what Dr. Siati was saying earlier is the thing that I try to encourage people to do, is like, let your students develop the judgment of when to use AI and when not to. Don't give them okay, I understand. Very young people, you may need to give them the traffic light. I would even use it with freshmen when they're learning languages, just because language learning can be done with AI, and you got to be careful. But once they're a bit older, give them the opportunity to experiment with different uses of AI and decide for themselves. And what will surprise you, though, is different people in the class will need it for different things because they have different needs. Someone who has ADHD may have trouble getting started. Someone who's very creative doesn't need it for brainstorming. Someone else needs it for brainstorming. Someone's grammar is fine. Someone needs help with grammar. Someone wants to write something very personal, so AI can't represent, but others are writing something relatively general and AI can help them. So, but the teacher needs to get over that barrier of just being afraid from the AI, and needs to just accept that students have it. You don't have to love it. You may love it, you may not love it, but it's there. So as soon as you start playing with it, you get less afraid of it, and you start to see its limitations too, by the way. So that's the
Absolutely. Maybe Jake, I can add. I mean, during
Please.
accreditation, we ask questions about just how do you integrate AI in accreditation or in your school, and you would be surprised. The responses are mixed. Some are curious and they ask us, "Oh, how do schools use AI? Are other schools using AI, and how are you using it?" And some are just cautious, and quite few are just plain tired, because it's not resistance. I think it's fatigue, and in many cases it's uncertainty, because people aren't sure where to start, or if they get it wrong. And when schools isn't just more sort of, we don't want to add another new technical thing for their teaching. They just need a guided path. I think if you compare it to a hiking trail, I think they want clear markers, freedom to explore, but also a sense that they're not wandering aimlessly or about to fall off a cliff with AI, because it's completely ambiguous to many schools, and others who are practicing with it are getting a little bit more confident because they're trialing small, low pressures use of AI, like letting students use AI for early stage of brainstorming, or like Dr. Maha said, sort of reflection. And I think they need to go. They need more. They need clear markers. They need sort of a pathway and support. And I think we need to give them that.
Wonderful. So I think what I'm taking away from both your answers is that this fear is rooted in this sense of uncertainty. How do I show up for my students in ways that will still benefit them in the face of such a technological change? But I'm also hearing that the answer to that is there's several components to that answer. I think one answer I'm hearing is community. How might we do this together as a group of educators, together in a form of collaboration between educators and students, that it doesn't need to be one directional, right? I'm also hearing this sense of this is the ultimate critical thinking challenge, right? If one of the goals that we have for our students is that they can navigate ambiguity, uncertainty, that they can form pathways where there haven't been pathways before, this is the work. And so helping students to think critically about how to use this incredibly powerful tool is a critical thinking act, which sounds incredibly transformative. And then also thinking about, well, how can we as school leaders provide some boundaries, some pathways to ensure that we're not just throwing our educators kind of out into a field and saying, figure out where you want to go, but we're offering some road marks. We're offering, some guidance in this massive uncertainty. And so that all sounds incredibly inspiring and also very practical. So thank you so much to the two of you for sharing. Now I know that as school leaders on this call, university is something that we think about a lot for our students and how we are preparing our students for success in the university application process, but also for success in university itself. And so, Dr. Bailey, I have a question for you. As a professor at the American University of Cairo, I imagine you're working with lots of different students. And I'm wondering, what are some of the skills gaps that you are observing in undergraduate cohorts that AI might help fill?
Yeah, thanks for this. So there's a lot of different things. I will say, related to a note in the chat about differentiated instruction. At university, especially at a liberal arts institution like AUC, where students from different disciplines take courses outside their discipline, I have found using AI to help you understand a reading really helpful. So the professors want to give you this reading at a certain level, and they don't want to take into consideration that some students' reading level is a little bit less, or it's too jargony for students from outside that major. And so I've been finding that this is something, and I tell the students directly, if their professor is not going to give you a reading at your level, yeah, use AI to help you understand the reading, and then read it later to make sure it hasn't missed anything. But this is one way of allowing everybody to read anything. There's this very nice tool called Typeset, or SciSpace now it's called. Anyway, it's called SciSpace. And you upload any PDF to it, and then you can tell it to help you understand it. You can ask it questions. It even recommends questions for you to ask about the paper. And you can ask it to talk to you as a layperson, as a professional, or as an academic. So my husband is a professor, and he makes it talk to him like an academic, but a student would ask to hear about it as a layperson. But if they're like seniors, they could ask it to professional. So that's one thing that it helps with. I think students tend to struggle with revising their own work. So kind of the example of having AI write something and then you revise it is a bit easier than revising your own work. Or asking AI to give you feedback on how to improve your work based on a rubric or something that your professor has given you. Now, this is a bit tricky, but if they use it very well, they can improve their paper before they even submit it to the professor. So it's still their work, but the AI is just recommending to them certain changes. The other thing is research skills. So the trick here is you need to use the right AI tool that does research properly. So there's actually like a ton of AI research tools that will get you real reference that are peer reviewed. But yeah, you just have to use a little bit of it can even create a literature review for you. It can compare sources for you. There's so many of those, so many different names that but also now Gemini and Perplexity have something called Deep Research that will write a like 8,000 word paper for you with references and everything. You just need to go then into these references and check them and then check their references, because AI won't find all the references, it'll miss things. But I imagine this is what's going to happen. We moved from note cards to library databases to Google and Google Scholar, and I think this will be the new thing for research. I don't think anybody's going to do research the old way in a couple of years' time. But you need to find out which tool is best for what. Like even those tools, some of them are better in the medical field. Some of them are better at finding good articles, but some are better at summarizing the articles. Some of them find articles that aren't very high quality, but are peer reviewed. So that's something, but I think this is a thing that's going to help students get started with that. The thing about critical judgment of generally using which tool for what is really important in general in life, not just for AI, for anything. And I think AI is going to make it even more of an issue as students find that out. And just the idea of recognizing, we've had this issue before. So people finding things on internet and social media that were not accurate, that was fake news or misinformation. Now with AI, there's hallucination, and then there's also the misinformation caused by AI. That's another level of judgment that everyone is going to be even more aware of with deep fakes and all of that. There are ethical issues that not just with responsible AI use, but just living in the world right now that you're exposed to all of this. And I think the presence of AI is just making it even starker.
Wow. Dr. Bailey, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about my own professional journey that moved from being an individual contributor to actually a manager, and that kind of like it's like a different skill set of being able to determine what is good work and what is not good work, to be able to kind of coordinate a team, and it sounds like that's the move that this moment is inviting us to help students do, right? To say like, well, maybe you don't need to go out and find all those individual sources anymore, but you do need to determine whether those sources are based on real information, right? And so it's an increasingly complex skill set, but it's one that I imagine will serve them well in university and beyond, which is really exciting. So thank you very much. Dr. Siati, I know that many graduates of the American International School of Egypt attend university internationally. And I'm curious, how did your community leverage AI to help make them more competitive in their university application process?
Yeah, I think this is an emerging field. I can give you a couple examples, and then I mean, maybe my most exciting example is one that I think is still emerging. To maybe make a connection back to what Dr. Mahal was just saying, I think this field of scholarship is really exciting to think about how AI will change it. Where Dr. Mahal started at the top of this discussion around bias, generative AI, the large language models that we have access to right now are kind of like blenders, right? They take a certain amount of data that large language model has access to, puts it in the blender, and then you ask it for new things that come out of it. It can only, blend your smoothie with what's in the blender. And so there is bias there, right? There are only certain data sets that are in there. Those data sets tend to be Western centric. I wish there was more Arabic scholarship in those in the blender. I wish there was more scholarship from lots of different parts of the world in the blender. I do think, though, that AI gives lots of hope to that, in that as a doctoral candidate, I had my own bias, which was I could only deal with the research I could read. And so now all of a sudden, if I ask it to, if I deal with those limits of bias, I actually have more access, which is really, really exciting. So then, like, to get back to the point of your question, one of the best advice I got, or the best pieces of advice I got on AI, is that current generative large language model AI is at its best when it is like an actor in a movie or a play, and we are the director. And so you would give it your stage directions. Hey, Chat GPT, I'll give you the exact example that helped me understand this. You are a professor of chemistry and biology at a prestigious university that holds doctorates in both fields. Last night at dinner, your nephew was complaining that science topic X is irrelevant, and you've been thinking about that all night long. So give me 3 reasons why science topic X is relevant that you would share with your nephew, right? And it kind of sets you up in that mindset so that the answers come out the way you want it to come out. And so with that as an example, one of the things I've seen schools experiment with is AI as interview practice for universities. So, hey, AI, you are the admissions director from university, from AUC. And you have all the criteria, all the criteria of admissions for AUC. You understand the type of candidate that AUC would like to have. Here's a list of interview questions my college counselor just gave me. Be my interview practice. And at the end of the interview, give me feedback on my answers. And it does a really, really good job being your interview practice. It also does a really, really good job giving you feedback. Like, so for example, my son is 15, not ready for college interviews yet, but he had a paper that was due. And we did that same thing, right? We took the rubric for the paper and his paper, we put it into Perplexity, and we gave Perplexity stage directions. We said, hey, Perplexity, you are, teacher Mrs. So-and-so. You teach this class. This is the rubric you've created. I'm about to submit this essay to you. As that teacher using this rubric, what kind of feedback would you give me? And so my son got to experiment with the kind of feedback he might get from his teacher. And as he looked at it, I was asking him, is this helpful for you as you revise this before you turn it in? And he was like, oh, yeah, actually. Because the 15-year-old boy is not thinking like a ninth grade social studies teacher, and neither is a 17 or 18-year-old senior thinking like a college admissions interviewer. And so to be able to have access to that thought pattern and to get feedback is infinitely appreciated and valuable.
That's amazing. I love this idea of being a director and helping our students be directors of how they're asking AI to support them in their university journeys, but in their broader educational journeys. I think one kind of plus one I will add to you, Dr. Ciotti, is the use of ChatGPT's voice mode, right? That this doesn't need to be done in a text way. This can be done almost like a phone conversation. I've had conversations with the voice version of GPT that were so realistic, I thanked it at the end without even noticing, right? And so there's this incredible opportunity for, I think, for us to help our young people become more effective directors of how AI operates within their lives, and yeah, it's fantastic. That's awesome. It's wonderful.
Can I jump in here,
Yes,
Jake? Just
please,
to add
please.
that this conversation, I appreciate the reminder. It reminds me of conversations I'm having around AI in the hiring process as we think about graduates going off into internships in the work field, but then also conversations with college counselors at the high school level, admissions officers at the university level, that Perplexity is one example of a tool that is really skilled at mining active data in a website where some other ones can't really check a website for you. And so you can share things like your resume, your profile, your interests, and ask questions about, like, would this university be a good fit for me and why? Based on what you know about me, like, why would this be a place where I would thrive, or what might be missing when you have your parameters, and kind of building a list and honing that list, particularly for schools that you won't have a chance to go and visit or don't know super well. And when it comes to the hiring, it's similar to take a job description and to take your resume, and maybe in a closed system like a notebook LLM, something that's not out to the universe, say, here are all my strengths and weaknesses and interests and what my dream is for employment. And here's the job. What do you see as my gap? What won't I have effectively proven I've done based on my resume or my CV? And then by contrast, like, speak to me about my highlight reel, in what ways am I amazing? And a psychologist friend of mine suggested, just as a fun practice, to take your CV and put it into Notebook LM, and it can make a podcast. Imagine listening to a podcast, two people talking about how amazing you are. So that's just a nice practice for anybody as a bonus. But I just appreciate that we're giving our young people tools for how to navigate. We have a lot to learn from this as well. And there's a lot of relevance, I'm sure, that we're attaching to ourselves personally and professionally. But I can't imagine what it would have been, the experience at 20 or 21 years old, to be able to go through a process and get so much feedback and counsel that, sure, you pick up the phone and you call your mentor, you have an advisor, you have a dean, but this is a tool at your disposal all the time to really hone your skills and to be able to speak to yourself in a really unique way.
Amazing. This idea that we can really help our students build out their support team in ways that they didn't have access to 3, 5, 7 years ago. And I can only imagine the power of hearing a young person of a young person hearing how amazing they are from, let's say, reading a piece of their work or reading their resume. I mean, I think that could be transformative in a university admissions process that can often be quite challenging. So that sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. So I would love to pivot our conversation to a new segment that is actually designed to help give our listeners new resources, things that they haven't previously thought of. And so I would love for us to just take maybe 20 or 30 seconds, kind of short popcorn answers here, of what are, let's say, text-based resources. Maybe it's a blog, maybe it's a book, something that has inspired you in your own journey to understand AI in the educational context. I will start with you, Amber.
So I think the book that I have to recommend is Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. And it's because his presentation is that he's really doubling down on the principle of using AI like a collaborator. And I'm just very inspired by Maha's language in this conversation about figuring out the right tools to use when in the right context and being critical about that and being able to throw out the garbage and accept when we can really leverage generative AI for to be our best and to serve us in the best way. So that would be my recommendation for a book.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Dr. Lewis, what's on your mind?
Oh gosh, actually, the AI classroom. There's a book which is I often go back to. It's the Ultimate Guide to Artificial Intelligence in Education. I think it's by Daniel Fitzpatrick. And it's a practical, school friendly, packed with classroom examples, and I really recommend it to schools.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. Bailey.
So I think this field is moving too fast for books.
Yes.
So I'm going to recommend blogs. So I agree, Ethan Mollick will blow your mind with how quickly he's thinking about all of this. But like, yeah, it changes. So whatever he wrote like a year ago, that's probably outdated by now. And so I really like Leon Fritz's blog. Christian had sent something from me. He talks a lot about AI ethics, but also like the AI assessment scale and like all the different ways you could integrate AI in your teaching. And if someone wants a more critical perspective, Audrey Waters, her blog is called Second Breakfast, second like 2ND breakfast. And it's important too, so that we don't get overtaken by the hype about AI. And it's important to stay aware of the dangers, especially I teach older students. You all are in school and you're teaching very young children. And so it's very important to be very careful about what could go wrong, not just with the children themselves using AI, but ourselves getting into maybe spaces where we end up using AI that might cause us to be unfair to students or sort of stereotype them or categorize them in particular ways, because AI historically has been used to categorize people. And there's a lot of inequality and discrimination just in the ways AI has been used in the past and the way it's been trained. And so I think it's important to stay cautious. I think people who are here are not the ones who are afraid. So once you're not afraid of AI, then you can also remember to still be cautious, to not get too overexcited with it. The AI Mirror is supposed to be a really good one. I see Christian mentioned it by Shannon Bell. I haven't finished it. I have it, but I haven't finished it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Bailey. Dr. Ciati.
Yeah, I think from biggest to smallest or broadest to most focused, I'm enjoying The Siren's Call by Chris Hayes. It's not about AI at all, but it's helping me think about attention, use of technology, and how, when is the right time to leverage technology, and potentially when is the right time to not. So that's been really helpful. I really like anything by Dr. John B. Nash from the University of Kentucky. He's been a guest on a podcast that I was a host of. And his wisdom, if you listen to any of his podcasts or his blogs or writings, is all about this idea that, this is moving too fast for books. It's even moving too fast for answers. We're at the speed now of asking questions. What are the right questions to ask? If somebody comes and says, I have all the answers to AI for you, they're probably really unknowing or a charlatan trying to sell you something. Because really we're about exploring together, right? It's a great unknown. And then, maybe the most specific, some of the publications coming out of a group called Culturally Responsive Evaluation and Assessment, CREA, out of the University of Chicago. I just read a publication by a research group, and it was amazing. It was talking about the physical nature of AI, that we believe it's this virtual thing in the cloud, but every process happens on a silicon chip in a factory, in a place, in a building, on land, usually indigenous, native, or some people's land, using electricity that comes from some electrical source that's cooled by some water source that's coming away from some person who could or should have access to that clean water. And how we really need to think of the physical, real world implications of AI as well.
Wonderful. Wow, that's quite a reading list from this team. I'm sure that our audience will have lots of opportunities to explore in the coming days and weeks based on the references you've all provided. I would love to engage with some of the audience questions. I see we've had a few come in, and so I would love to hear one that is really top of mind. Let's see. There's a question here from Nabil Kaldas. How can we support our teachers during induction plan workshops? Most of our faculty survey result requests workshops are focused on integrating AI in education. And is MSA planning to provide any online workshops? I'm curious, which of us has a strong reaction to that question?
I'm happy to start, and anyone could take over. Just to the last piece about MSA providing online workshops. At Middle States, we have the Evolution Academy, and these are our online courses. And we have AI 101, AI 201. We also have some change leadership courses and more to come. We'll be growing our library. So that's a source and a place where folks can do continued learning on a schedule that works for them. So it's very flexible, it's asynchronous. We also, we put into the chat, and I understand there's a little friction with not being able to highlight our links, but we do have on the MSA Evolution Lab site, AI resources for AI literacy courses. We highly recommend classroom teachers try the AI for Education. It's a free course for educators. It's a great primer to get some AI literacy, to understand the terms and to start to practice prompting and what that looks like and feels like. And that's from Amanda Bickerstaff, is the co-founder and CEO of AI for Education. She's also on our Rail advisory team with Maha. So it's just one of many examples you would find on that site.
Wonderful.
I need to, because I'm not on the Rail advisory team and I'm not the leader of it like Amber is. I need to do a shout out that I think my answer to this would be engage your school in Rail, or at least consider it. I think the idea of having a framework for AI implementation is exactly the right idea for K-12 schools. Right? It's not about one workshop or teaching about one tool. It's about creating that framework for our schools so that our schools are robust and resilient and have the capacity to do continuous development as AI changes. One of the dangers that we always fall into in K-12 education, specifically international schools, specifically with this round of consultants that go around, is that we feel like we can pay somebody X number of thousands of dollars. They come in for 2 days and it's handled. Our teachers got it, so now we're ready to go. And maybe 3-5 years later, we can come back to the topic again. But that's certainly not how we're going to be able to deal with this. So that process that Rail provides, that I've seen firsthand, is phenomenal, and I hope it for every school.
I think I may add from my experience using the Evolution Lab A101 and the 201. And as an educator myself, I've done the courses, and it was an amazing experience for me to see how I can simulate discussions with an AI, and how can I prepare the lesson and for many of my audience for students' needs. And the AI just helped me, and it kept encouraging me to reflect and change. And I think these courses will be really, really beneficial for teachers.
Mm-hmm. So as someone who teaches teachers all the time, whether locally at AUC, but I also do a lot of global PD for people all over the world, one of the key things is to have a no AI shaming approach. This is really important. There is no best practice that will work for teachers of high schoolers and 4-year-olds, and for mathematics and history and literature teaching. All of these will need to approach AI in different ways, and people will be at different phases of their development. Sometimes people get very polarized around AI in a very, looks like politics. And we need to make everyone feel welcome and nobody feel alienated by these conversations, and also create opportunities for them to learn from each other. But whatever the learning outcomes they're trying to achieve, we need to figure out how to help them achieve those learning outcomes in the age of AI, which may mean integrating AI or may mean resisting AI. It may mean changing your assessments or maybe integrating AI in your assessments. But whatever it is, you need to have this no AI shaming approach and to really follow it. It's really hard to follow, actually, because all of us have a perspective on AI and we have values on AI. And everyone who's been in a room with me knows I have a particular approach to AI. But we still need to make sure that everyone feels like they can express themselves and do what makes sense for them. And also the opportunity to fail, because it's uncertain. You don't know every time you try something with AI whether it's going to work or not. Sometimes I'm showing my students something and I'm using AI and the tool does something different than what it did the past 10 times. I'm like, oh, now it's generating the code. I didn't ask it to generate code and now it's created the assignment. Now I have to change the assignment. So I had to adapt, but sometimes people will experiment with something and it won't work well, or the students will hate it, or something will go wrong. And we as schools and as school leaders, you need to create that space for them to do that. And someone was asking in the chat about making time. This is so important, incentivizing teachers and giving them time to do this, not asking them to just do it on top of everything else, and assuming that some people will be able to do it quickly and will be excited about it, but other people, it will be a burden for them. So how do we support them through that with community, but also with time if possible, incentivize in other ways? And of course, there's always the option of teach them something to do with AI that will save them time, so that then they have time to do the other stuff. But the problem is right now they still have to revise the work of AI. So we're still not there in the sense of AI is really going to save time for a lot of things, because you have to revise what you get out of it. But yeah, find out what people need to help them free up some time to do the AI, to learn about AI so that they can start integrating it.
Yeah. This idea of no AI shaming is so powerful to me, especially when I think about different change projects that I've seen or that I've led within school contexts. Right, that fear about the change is linked to uncertainty. It's linked to this: I don't want to mess up. I don't want to get it wrong. And really, offering an opportunity for folks to approach this challenge with a sense of curiosity, with a sense of possibility, with a sense of experimentation, with maybe even a sense of playfulness. That may unlock the way forward. I think, as we've all shared, like answers are hard to come by. What we need to stay with are the questions now, and so that sounds like a really powerful perspective. As much as I hate to do it, I am going to have to bring us to a close here because we are approaching time. I think a few things that I am walking away from this conversation. From Dr. Bailey, I am really inspired by the sense that educators matter more now than ever, right? That it's how do we help our students develop wisdom in the face of AI? How do we know? How do we help them understand when it's biased, when it's hallucinating, when it's rooted in inequitable ideas or conceptions? And how do we give them opportunities to practice so that they can learn from our wisdom and develop and generate their own? So amazing. Thank you so much. From Dr. Lewis, I'm understanding that different Egyptian schools are in different phases of adoption related to AI, that some are abandoned entirely. They're still very much rooted in this fear, and others are using it robustly, and that many successful schools are investigating how AI can adapt to their context using small experiments, right? Small adjustments. And that I think you mentioned briefly something we didn't have time to go into deeply, but this idea that action research can be a wonderful method for learning how to run these experiments in ways that are rooted in a school's context and in their own experience. Amber, I am really inspired by this idea that successful schools are shifting from being reactive to being proactive, right? That in a reactive way, they're thinking about AI as this cheating tool. How do we ban this? How do we push this aside? But the proactive schools are really thinking about, well, how can this create powerful learning experiences in ways that have previously been impossible? How might we use this red light, green light, yellow light system to help bring a sense of transparency to the work that we're doing with students in ways that feel really honest and really authentic and really genuine. So thank you very much for that. And Dr. Siati, I think a question that you asked that's really sticking with me is, who is benefiting from my use of this tool, right? That ed tech companies don't always have students' best interests in mind. That it's a serious ethical consequence when AI is degrading student attention that we know is vital for their growth and development. But we also know that avoiding it entirely is not going to be the way forward. That AI is on our team, and it's a question of, well, how do we want to partner with it? So all really powerful insights. I know I'm walking away with a ton. So thank you so much to the four of you for sharing not just your time, but your wisdom, your expertise, your experience. It's been a wonderful conversation. I will invite our audience to look out for the recording of this webinar. There's a lot of great ideas that we've talked about today. So check out the recording, which will be on our website soon. We'll also share it over email. And really, once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I hope it has inspired a new way, a new perspective in you. And I think all of us at MSA look forward to continuing the conversation in the weeks, months, and years ahead. So thank you so much, everyone.